Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Horizon and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship moved slowly through space near the colony world of New Denver. The year was 2387, and humanity had built homes on 12 different solar systems. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years and had never seen anything like what happened next. A shadow fell across the screen. Something huge blocked out the stars. Jake's heart began to beat faster as he saw the biggest ship he had ever seen in his life. The alien vessel was 3 times the size of any human ship. Its hull was black with strange blue lights running along its sides. The ship looked like it was built for war. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her station and her hands moved quickly over the controls. She was Jake's best officer and had been with him for 5 years. Amy's face was pale as she read the numbers on her screen. The alien ship was 10 miles long and had enough weapons to destroy an entire planet. Jake pressed a button and spoke to his crew. His voice was calm, but inside he felt afraid. He had 40 people on his ship, and they were all looking to him for answers. The ship had been on a peaceful mission to check on the new colony. Now they faced something that could kill them all in seconds. The alien ship sent a message. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and hard. It spoke in perfect English, which surprised Jake. How did these aliens know human language, when humans had never met them before? The voice belonged to someone who called himself Commander Crickstall of the Zephyrian Empire. The commander told Jake that all humans must surrender immediately. He said that humans were nothing more than animals who did not deserve to travel among the stars. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 300 star systems and would now add human worlds to their collection. Resistance would mean death for every human alive. Jake looked at Amy and saw the fear in her eyes. He looked around the bridge at his crew and saw the same fear on every face. But Jake had not spent 15 years in space just to give up when things got hard. He activated the communication system and spoke directly to the alien commander. He told Commander Crickstall that humans would never surrender to anyone. Earth and all human colonies were free worlds and would stay that way. Jake said that if the Zephyrians wanted human worlds, they would have to fight for them. His voice was strong and clear, even though his hands were shaking. The alien commander laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. He said that humans would learn what happened to species that defied the Zephyrian Empire. The commander gave an order, and Jake watched in horror as the alien ship fired a single shot at the orbital defense platform above New Denver. The platform had been built to protect the colony from asteroids and pirates. It was the strongest thing humans had ever built. In space, the alien weapon hit it and the entire platform disappeared in a flash of blue light. Nothing was left. Not even pieces floating in space. Amy's fingers moved over her controls as she tried to understand what she was seeing. The weapon the aliens used was beyond anything humans had ever imagined. One shot had destroyed something that should have taken hundreds of missiles to damage. If they could do that to a defense platform, what could they do to planets full of people? Jake ordered his ship to move away from the alien vessel as fast as possible. The Horizon's engines roared to life and the ship began to accelerate. He knew they could not fight something that powerful. Their only chance was to escape and warn Earth about what was coming. The alien ship did not follow them. Commander Crickstall sent one more message. He said that humans had 7 days to surrender all their worlds, or the Zephyrian Empire would take them by force. Every human colony would be destroyed and every human would become a slave. The message ended and the alien ship disappeared into space. Jake sat in his captain's chair and tried to think. Amy was working at her station and collecting information about the alien ship. She had recorded everything about their weapons and technology. This information might help Earth prepare for what was coming, but Jake knew the truth. Humanity had never faced anything like the Zephyrian Empire. Their weapons were too powerful and their ships were too big. How could humans fight an empire that controlled 300 star systems? How could they win against aliens who could destroy planets? Amy turned to Jake and showed him what she had discovered. The alien ship had been sending messages to other parts of space. The Zephyrians were not just talking about conquest. They were planning to enslave every human alive. Men, women, and children would all become workers for the alien empire. Jake made his decision. The horizon would return to Earth as fast as possible. He would give Earth's leaders all the information Amy had collected. Maybe someone smarter than him could find a way to fight back. Maybe humanity could find a weakness in the alien empire. But as Jake looked at the stars, he wondered if this was the end of human freedom among the stars. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison first met the Zephyrian Empire. Now he hid in an old mining station deep inside an asteroid field. The station had been abandoned for 20 years, but Jake and his team had turned it into their secret base. Earth was gone. The great fleets that protected humanity had been destroyed in 3 days of fighting. Jake was no longer a captain in the Earth Defense Force. That force no longer existed. Now he led a group of humans who refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. They called themselves the Resistance, and they fought the aliens in ways the Zephyrians did not expect. Dr. Lisa Harper worked at a table covered with alien technology. She had been studying Zephyrian weapons and ships for months. Lisa was the smartest person Jake had ever met, and she understood things about alien science that made his head hurt. Her long brown hair was always messy because she forgot to comb it when she was thinking about her work. Sergeant Ben Torres sat across the room cleaning his rifle. Ben had been a Marine before the invasion and knew more about fighting than anyone else in the Resistance. He was a big man with scars on his hands from years of combat. Ben never smiled anymore, but Jake trusted him with his life. The three of them had become the leaders of the human resistance movement. They had started with just 20 people, but now they commanded over 300 fighters spread across 12 hidden bases. Most of their people were soldiers who had escaped when their units were destroyed. Others were civilians who had lost their families to the aliens. Lisa looked up from her work and called Jake over to her table. She had been taking apart a Zephyrian communication device for 2 weeks. The device was the size of a human hand and made from some kind of crystal that glowed with blue light. Lisa had finally figured out how it worked. She explained that all Zephyrians were connected to each other through these devices. Every alien soldier could talk to every other alien soldier instantly, no matter how far apart they were. This was why the Zephyrian military moved like one giant machine. They never had to wait for orders or wonder what other units were doing. But Lisa had discovered something else. The communication system had one big weakness. It could not handle information that did not make sense. When Zephyrians received orders that were illogical or contradictory, the system would slow down or even crash for a few seconds. Jake thought about what Lisa had told him. Human military tactics were based on surprise and flexibility. Human commanders often made decisions that seemed crazy, but worked because the enemy did not expect them. Maybe this was how humanity could fight back against the aliens. Ben finished cleaning his rifle and joined the conversation. He had been thinking about the same problem from a soldier's point of view. The Zephyrians fought like a computer program. They always did what made the most sense according to their training. They never took risks or tried anything that might fail. Jake remembered something from his first meeting with Commander Crickstall. The alien had seemed confused when Jake refused to surrender. The Zephyrian probably expected all intelligent species to give up when faced with superior force. But humans did not always do what made sense. Ben suggested that they test this theory. The Resistance had been planning to attack a Zephyrian supply depot on the edge of the solar system. The depot was heavily defended and a normal attack would fail. But what if they attacked in a way that made no sense? Jake liked the idea. Instead of attacking the depot's weak points, they would attack its strongest defenses. Instead of retreating when they took casualties, they would advance even faster. Instead of trying to steal supplies, they would try to destroy everything. The Zephyrians would not know how to respond to tactics that seemed suicidal. Lisa warned them that this plan was extremely dangerous. If she was wrong about the alien communication system, many good people would die for nothing. But Jake knew they had to try something. The Resistance could not hide in asteroid fields forever. Eventually, the Zephyrians would find them and kill them all. The attack on the supply depot took place 3 days later. Jake led 50 fighters in small ships that looked like space junk. The Zephyrians ignored them until it was too late. The human ships crashed directly into the depot's main defense towers. Instead of trying to avoid them, Ben and his assault team landed on the depot while the Zephyrian defenders were still confused. Instead of trying to capture supplies, they planted explosives on everything they could find. The aliens kept waiting for the humans to act rationally, but it never happened. The attack succeeded beyond Jake's wildest hopes. The Zephyrians lost an entire depot full of weapons and supplies. More importantly, they lost something else. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens had been defeated by humans. News of the victory spread to every resistance base. Humans across the galaxy heard that someone was fighting back and winning. Volunteers began arriving at Jake's hidden bases. Some were soldiers, but many were just ordinary people who wanted to help. Jake realized that the Resistance had found something more valuable than weapons or supplies. They had found hope. As long as humans believed they could win, they would keep fighting. The Zephyrians had conquered their worlds and destroyed their fleets, but they could not conquer the human spirit. Over the next month, Jake led more attacks using the same crazy tactics. His fighters would do things that made no sense to alien minds. They would attack when they should retreat. They would ignore easy targets and go after impossible ones. They would fight hardest when they were losing. Each victory brought more volunteers to the Resistance. Each defeat taught them something new about how to confuse the alien communication system. Jake began to believe that humanity might actually have a chance to win this war. But Lisa made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying captured Zephyrian prisoners and found something that scared her more than their weapons. The aliens were not just individual soldiers working together. They were something much more dangerous and much harder to defeat. Dr. Lisa Harper stared at the Zephyrian prisoner through the thick glass wall of the holding cell. The alien sat perfectly still on a metal bench. Its 4 arms were folded across its chest, and its crystalline skin reflected the lights in strange patterns. The alien had not moved or spoken for 3 hours. Jake Morrison stood beside Lisa and watched the prisoner with growing concern. They had captured the Zephyrian during their last raid, but something was wrong. The alien acted nothing like the fierce warriors they had fought in space. It seemed more like a machine that had been turned off. Lisa had spent 2 weeks studying the prisoner. She had taken blood samples and scanned its body with every piece of medical equipment the Resistance owned. What she discovered changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. She turned to Jake and Ben Torres, who had just arrived from the training area. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking slightly. Lisa had always been calm even in the worst situations. Seeing her scared made Jake feel afraid too. Lisa explained that Zephyrians were not individual beings like humans. They were parts of a single consciousness that existed on their home world. The crystalline formations on their skin were not just armor. They were biological computers that connected every Zephyrian to a central mind. This meant that every Zephyrian soldier knew everything that every other Zephyrian knew. They shared memories, experiences, and knowledge instantly across vast distances. When one Zephyrian learned something, all Zephyrians learned it at the same time. Jake felt sick as he understood what this meant. The Resistance had been fighting one enemy with millions of bodies. Every time they killed a Zephyrian soldier, the Central Mind learned from that death. Every tactic they used became known to every alien in the galaxy within minutes. Ben asked why the prisoner was acting so strangely. Lisa showed them the scans she had taken of the alien's brain. The crystalline connections in its skull were damaged. The prisoner had been cut off from the central consciousness during the battle. For the first time in its life, this Zephyrian was thinking alone. The isolation was killing the alien slowly. Zephyrians were not meant to exist as individuals. Without the constant connection to other minds, this one was losing the ability to function. It would die within days unless they could reconnect it to its people. But Lisa had discovered something else. While connected to the central mind, Zephyrians could not think independent thoughts. They could not question orders or imagine new solutions to problems. The central consciousness controlled everything they did. And Jake realized that this was both the aliens' greatest strength and their greatest weakness. If they could somehow damage or destroy the central consciousness, the entire Zephyrian Empire would collapse. Millions of alien soldiers would be left helpless and confused without their guiding mind. Lisa had been studying the quantum communication system that connected all Zephyrians. The technology was incredibly advanced, but it had one critical flaw. The system could be infected with a virus that would spread to every connected mind in the galaxy. The virus would not kill the Zephyrians. Instead, it would give them something they had never experienced before: individual consciousness, free will, the ability to think for themselves instead of following orders from the central mind. Ben laughed when he heard this plan. He said it sounded like they wanted to cure the aliens instead of defeating them. But Jake understood what Lisa was suggesting. If every Zephyrian suddenly became an individual, their empire would fall apart instantly. The problem was creating and delivering such a virus. They would need access to the central consciousness itself. That meant traveling to the Zephyrian homeworld and somehow getting inside their most secure facility. It would be the most dangerous mission anyone had ever attempted. Jake called meeting of all resistance leaders. Representatives from 12 hidden bases gathered in the main conference room of the asteroid station. Jake explained Lisa's discovery and her plan to defeat the Zephyrian Empire. Most of the leaders thought the plan was impossible. The Zephyrian homeworld was protected by thousands of ships and defense stations. No human had ever seen it and lived to tell about it. Even if they could get there, how would they find and enter the central consciousness facility? But Commander Amy Carter, who had escaped the destruction of Earth's fleet, had an idea. She had been studying captured Zephyrian star charts and noticed something interesting. The aliens never patrolled certain areas of space near their home world. These areas seemed empty and worthless. Amy suggested that these empty zones might contain something the Zephyrians wanted to hide. Maybe the central consciousness was not on their official homeworld at all. Maybe it was hidden somewhere the aliens thought no one would ever look. Jake decided that Amy's theory was worth investigating. But they would need more information about Zephyrian space and the location of their most important facilities. The only way to get that information was to capture a high-ranking alien officer. Lisa pointed out another problem with their plan. Even if they could create the consciousness virus, they would need a living Zephyrian brain to serve as a bridge into the alien network. The virus could not simply be transmitted by radio or computer. It needed biological contact with the quantum communication system. The prisoner in their holding cell was dying and would not live long enough to help them. They needed to capture another Zephyrian and keep it healthy while somehow convincing it to betray its own species. That seemed even more impossible than the rest of their plan. Ben suggested that they focus on one step at a time. First, they would capture a high-ranking Zephyrian officer. Then they would learn the location of the central consciousness. Finally, they would figure out how to get there and deliver the virus. Jake agreed with Ben's approach. The Resistance had survived this long by taking things one battle at a time. They had learned to do impossible things by breaking them down into smaller problems they could solve. But time was running out. More human colonies fell to the Zephyrians every week. Soon there would be no free humans left in the galaxy. If they were going to save their species, they had to act soon. Jake Morrison stood in the cargo bay of the captured Zephyrian destroyer they had renamed the UCS Defiance. The ship looked nothing like human vessels, with its curved hull and blue energy conduits running along the walls. Everything about it felt alien and wrong, but it was their ticket into the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. Commander Velther sat in the corner of the bay with his hands and feet secured by metal restraints. The Zephyrian officer had been captured during a raid on an alien supply convoy 3 weeks ago. Unlike their first prisoner, Velther was still connected to the central consciousness and could provide the information they needed. Dr. Lisa Harper worked at a portable computer station nearby. She had been questioning Velther for days and slowly building a map of Zephyrian space. The alien officer answered her questions in a flat, emotionless voice. He seemed to feel no loyalty or anger about helping his enemies. Jake found this disturbing. Humans would die before betraying their friends, but Velther acted like he was reading from a textbook. Lisa explained that individual Zephyrians had no concept of personal loyalty or betrayal. They only cared about serving the central consciousness. Ben Torres finished checking the weapons locker and joined Jake near the prisoner. Ben had selected 11 other volunteers for this suicide mission. Each person knew they would probably die, but they came anyway. The team included Amy Carter as navigator and Steve Kane as pilot, along with Maria Santos, their best engineer. Lisa had made a breakthrough in her research the night before. She had discovered that the central consciousness was not located on the official Zephyrian home world as everyone believed. Instead, it existed on a hidden planet called Nexus Prime that appeared on no star charts. Velther had provided the coordinates to Nexus Prime without hesitation. He explained that the planet was actually a living computer made from the crystalline remains of billions of dead Zephyrians. Every member of their species who had died over millions of years had their consciousness absorbed into this massive organic brain. The thought made Jake sick. The Zephyrians had been building their central mind by feeding it the souls of their own people for countless generations. No wonder they showed no emotion or individual thought. They were all just parts of a vast machine made from the dead. But Lisa saw opportunity in this horror. The consciousness virus she had designed would work much better on an organic computer than on a mechanical one. If she could introduce the virus directly into Nexus Prime, it would spread to every Zephyrian in the galaxy within hours. The journey to Nexus Prime would take 2 weeks using the captured destroyer's faster-than-light drive. Jake had decided to keep Velther alive during the trip, even though the alien officer was a security risk. They might need his knowledge to navigate the defenses around the hidden planet. Steve Kane activated the ship's engines, and the Defiance began its journey into Zephyrian space. Jake watched the stars change on the main screen as they entered territory that no free human had ever seen. They were heading into the most dangerous region of the galaxy with no backup and no way home. During the first week of travel, they passed several Zephyrian worlds. Jake stared in amazement at the scope of the alien empire. Entire planets had been converted into massive factories and mining operations. Thousands of different alien species worked as slaves to feed the empire's endless hunger for resources. Amy Carter mapped each system they passed through. She recorded the locations of defense stations, patrol routes, and communication networks. This information would be valuable to the Resistance even if their main mission failed. Other humans needed to know what they were really fighting against. Lisa spent most of her time working on the consciousness virus. She had managed to isolate the quantum patterns that controlled Zephyrian group behavior. By reversing these patterns, she could theoretically give every alien the ability to think as an individual, but the virus needed a living Zephyrian brain to serve as a bridge into the quantum network. Lisa had been studying Velthor's neural patterns and making disturbing discoveries. The process of disconnecting him from the central consciousness would probably kill him. Jake discussed this problem with Ben during one of their planning sessions. They both agreed that asking Velthor to sacrifice himself was pointless. The alien officer had no concept of individual choice or heroism. He would do whatever the central consciousness commanded, even if it meant helping his enemies. However, something strange began happening during the second week of their journey. Velthor started asking questions that had nothing to do with Lisa's interrogation. He wanted to know why humans fought so hard for their freedom. He asked about human emotions and individual relationships. Lisa realized that Velthor's extended separation from other Zephyrians was having an unexpected effect. His connection to the central consciousness was weakening, and he was beginning to develop individual thoughts. For the first time in his life, Velthor was becoming a unique person. This process was extremely painful for the alien officer. His body was not designed to function without constant input from the collective mind. Velthor began experiencing headaches, weakness, and periods of confusion. Lisa estimated that he would die within days if the disconnection continued, but Velthor surprised everyone by saying that he did not want to reconnect to the central consciousness. He had begun to enjoy thinking his own thoughts and making his own decisions. The alien officer asked Jake to explain concepts like friendship, sacrifice, and hope. Jake found himself talking to Velthor for hours about what it meant to be human. The alien officer listened with growing fascination as Jake described love, family, loyalty, and the desire for freedom. These ideas were completely foreign to Zephyrian experience, but Velthor wanted to understand them. As they approached Nexus Prime, Jake realized that their mission had changed. They were no longer just trying to defeat an enemy. They were trying to give an entire species the gift of individual consciousness. The virus would not destroy the Zephyrians, but rather free them from millions of years of mental slavery. Velthor agreed to help them deliver the virus even though he knew it would kill him. The alien officer had chosen to sacrifice himself for the freedom of his people. Jake was amazed that someone who had been their enemy just weeks before was now willing to die for their cause. Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Jake stared at the hidden planet on their main screen and felt his heart sink. The world was surrounded by more defense stations and patrol ships than he had ever seen in one place. Getting to the surface would be impossible, but Steve Kane had studied the defensive patterns and found a weakness. The Zephyrians never expected anyone to attack their most sacred world. Their defenses were designed to keep people out, not to fight a determined assault. If they could create enough confusion, they might have a chance. The attack on Nexus Prime began with the most insane plan Jake Morrison had ever heard. Instead of targeting the planetary defense grid or the quantum nexus facility, Ben Torres wanted to attack the planet's waste processing centers. The idea seemed so crazy that Jake almost rejected it immediately, but Ben explained his reasoning. The Zephyrians would never expect anyone to attack sewage treatment plants. These facilities would have minimal defenses because no rational enemy would waste time and resources on such unimportant targets. This was exactly the kind of illogical thinking that confused alien minds. Lisa Harper supported Ben's plan for scientific reasons. The waste processing centers were connected to the same underground network that supplied power and communication to the quantum nexus. If they could get inside these facilities, they could reach the main target through maintenance. Tunnels and service passages. Commander Velther listened to their discussion with growing amazement. His connection to the central consciousness had weakened so much that he was now thinking almost like a human. The alien officer said that no Zephyrian military commander would ever consider Ben's strategy because it made no logical sense. Jake made the decision to proceed with the insane plan. The Defiance would create a distraction by attacking the orbital defense stations while Ben's team landed on the planet's surface. Amy Carter and Steve Kane would pilot the ship in a desperate battle to keep the defenders busy. Dr. Lisa Harper made final preparations for the consciousness virus. She had compressed the program into a small crystalline device that looked similar to Zephyrian technology. The device would need to be connected directly to the quantum nexus and activated by a living Zephyrian brain. Velther volunteered to carry out this final step, even though it would certainly kill him. The alien officer had become fascinated by human concepts of heroism and sacrifice. He wanted to experience what it felt like to choose death for the benefit of others. Jake felt strange emotions as he prepared to trust their most important mission to someone who had been their enemy just weeks before. But Velther had proven his commitment by helping them navigate Zephyrian defenses and sharing critical intelligence about Nexus Prime. The assault began when Steve Kane piloted the Defiance directly at the largest orbital defense station. The Zephyrian defenders expected him to veer away at the last moment, but Steve kept the ship on a collision course. The aliens scrambled to respond to what appeared to be a suicide attack. At the last possible second, Steve pulled the ship into a sharp turn that brought them alongside the defense station. Ben Torres and his assault team launched themselves from the ship's cargo bay in small pods, designed to look like debris from the battle above. The pods crashed into Nexus Prime's atmosphere and landed near the waste processing centers exactly as planned. Jake was amazed that they had made it to the surface without being detected. The Zephyrians were still focused on the space battle and had not noticed the tiny landing craft. Ben led his team through the maintenance tunnels beneath the planet's surface. The passages were dark and filled with strange machinery that hummed with alien energy. Jake followed close behind with Lisa and Velther while the rest of the team provided security. They encountered no guards in the underground network. The Zephyrians had never imagined that anyone would try to reach the quantum nexus through the waste processing system. Their overconfidence in the logic of their defenses had created the perfect weakness for humans to exploit. Above ground, Amy Carter and Steve Kane fought a desperate battle against overwhelming odds. The Defiance was fast and well armed, but it faced dozens of enemy ships. They used every trick Jake had taught them about confusing alien tactical systems. Amy programmed the ship's autopilot to fly in patterns that made no sense to Zephyrian minds. The ship would accelerate when it should retreat dive when it should climb and attack the strongest targets while ignoring easy ones. The alien defenders could not predict what the human ship would do next. Meanwhile, Ben's team reached the quantum nexus chamber deep beneath the planet's surface. Jake stared in horror at what he found there. The chamber was filled with millions of crystal formations that pulsed with blue light. Each crystal contained the consciousness of a dead Zephyrian absorbed into the collective mind. The nexus itself was a massive organic computer that filled most of the underground cavern. Tentacles of living crystal stretched in all directions, connecting to communication networks across the galaxy. The entire structure breathed with a slow rhythm that reminded Jake of a sleeping giant. Lisa activated her equipment and began scanning the nexus for the best place to introduce the virus. She found a central node that connected to all the major communication pathways. If they could inject the virus there, it would spread to every Zephyrian in the galaxy within minutes. But reaching the central node required someone to climb deep into the organic computer itself. The living crystal would try to absorb any intruder and add their consciousness to the collective mind. Only a Zephyrian could survive long enough to plant the virus device. Velther stepped forward without hesitation. The alien officer had been preparing for this moment throughout their journey. He understood that his sacrifice would give his people something they had never experienced before: individual freedom and the right to think their own thoughts. Jake tried to find words to thank Velther for his courage, but the alien officer smiled and said he had learned about friendship from humans. He considered Jake and the others to be his friends and wanted to help them succeed. This was the first time Jake had ever seen a Zephyrian show genuine emotion. Velther climbed into the Nexus carrying Lisa's virus device. The organic computer immediately began trying to absorb his mind and integrate his consciousness into the collective. The alien officer fought against this process while he searched for the central node dot above ground. The space battle was reaching its climax. The Defiance had taken heavy damage and was running out of ammunition. Amy and Steve knew they could not hold out much longer against the superior alien forces. They needed Ben's team to complete their mission soon, or everyone would die. Lisa watched her instruments as Velther moved deeper into the quantum nexus. The alien officer was fighting a mental battle against the collective consciousness while his body climbed through passages of living crystal. His life signs were weakening, but he continued forward. Finally, Velther reached the central node and connected Lisa's device to the main communication pathway. The virus began uploading immediately, but the process would take several minutes to complete. Velther had to hold his position and fight off the collective mind until the upload finished. Jake watched helplessly as his alien friend sacrificed himself for the freedom of humanity and his own people. The quantum nexus began to shake as the virus spread through its systems. Crystal formations throughout the chamber started flickering as the collective consciousness fought against the infection. The virus was working, but Jake wondered if it would spread fast enough to save them all. The consciousness virus spread through the Zephyrian quantum network like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Jake Morrison watched the crystal formations in the Nexus chamber flicker and dim as the collective mind fought desperately against the infection. Commander Velther's body lay motionless, deep inside the organic computer where he had made his final sacrifice, above ground. Amy Carter and Steve Kane felt the change immediately. The Zephyrian ships attacking the Defiance suddenly stopped firing and began drifting aimlessly through space. The alien pilots were experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in their lives and could not handle the overwhelming sensation of thinking alone. Dr. Lisa Harper monitored the virus spread on her portable computer. The infection had reached 12 star systems in the first minute and was accelerating as it jumped from ship to ship through the communication network. Every Zephyrian in the galaxy would be affected within hours. Ben Torres and his assault team prepared to evacuate the Nexus chamber as the organic computer began tearing itself apart. The collective consciousness was dying and taking the entire facility with it. Massive crystal formations crashed to the floor as the quantum network collapsed. Jake felt the ground shake beneath his feet as Nexus Prime entered its death throes. The planet had been converted into a living brain over millions of years, and now that brain was experiencing something it had never known before. Individual thoughts from millions of separate minds overwhelmed the collective system they ran through the maintenance tunnels as the underground network collapsed around them. Emergency lighting flickered and died as power systems failed throughout the planet. Jake could hear the sound of crystal formations shattering in chambers. Far above their heads, Ben led them to the emergency exit they had scouted during their infiltration. The waste processing center was in chaos as automated systems tried to cope with the breakdown of central control. Alien workers stood motionless in the corridors, unsure what to do without orders from the collective mind. Steve Kane brought the Defiance down to pick up the assault team. The ship's hull was scorched and damaged from the space battle, but its engines still worked. Amy Carter reported that Zephyrian ships throughout the system had stopped responding to commands from their home world DOT as they lifted off from Nexus. Prime Jake looked back at the dying planet through the ship's rear cameras. Massive explosions were tearing apart the surface as the quantum nexus destroyed itself. The collective consciousness that had controlled an empire spanning 300 star systems was finally dead. The journey back to human space took 3 weeks. During that time, they received reports from resistance bases throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had imagined possible. Alien fleets drifted powerlessly through space as their crews struggled to understand individual consciousness. Some Zephyrians adapted to their new mental freedom better than others. These individuals began questioning the empire they had served blindly for so long. They wondered why they had conquered peaceful worlds and enslaved innocent species. Many felt guilt and shame for the first time in their lives. Other Zephyrians could not handle the transition to individual thought. The shock of sudden mental isolation drove them into catatonic states. These aliens simply shut down and stopped functioning entirely. Hospital ships from neutral worlds rushed to provide medical assistance. Jake received a communication from Earth as they approached the Sol system. The planet had been liberated by human forces when the Zephyrian occupation troops lost contact with their commanders. Similar victories were being reported from colonies throughout human space, but the cost of freedom had been enormous. Billions of humans had died during a 6-month occupation. Entire worlds had been strip-mined for resources to feed the alien war machine. It would take generations to rebuild what had been destroyed. The Defiance docked at the rebuilt orbital station above Earth. Jake Morrison stepped off the ship as the hero who had brought down an empire, but he felt no joy in the victory. 2. Many good people had died, including Commander Velther, who had sacrificed everything for the freedom of both species. Amy Carter was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Earth Defense Fleet. Her experience fighting the Zephyrians made her the perfect choice to protect humanity from future threats. She promised that humans would never again be caught unprepared by alien invasion. Ben Torres accepted leadership of the Galactic Defense Corps, a new organization dedicated to protecting smaller species from conquest and slavery. His knowledge of guerrilla warfare would help other worlds defend themselves against powerful enemies. Dr. Lisa Harper founded the Institute for Interspecies Understanding on Earth's moon. Her research into alien psychology and communication would help prevent future wars between different species. She also continued working on ways to help former Zephyrian slaves adapt to individual consciousness. Steve Kane became humanity's first ambassador to the reformed Zephyrian worlds. Many former aliens wanted to make peace with the species they had tried to conquer. Steve's piloting skills and diplomatic nature made him ideal for building bridges between former enemies. Jake Morrison was offered command of Earth's entire space fleet, but he declined the position. The war had changed him in ways he was still trying to understand. He had seen too much death and destruction to feel comfortable in a position of power. Instead, Jake chose a different path. He took command of a small exploration ship and headed for the galactic rim where new worlds waited to be discovered. His legend spread throughout the galaxy as the story of the human who brought down an empire, but Jake knew the truth. He had not won the war through superior firepower or brilliant strategy. Victory had come through the simple human refusal to surrender no matter how hopeless things seemed. Even when facing an enemy that controlled 300 star systems, humanity had never stopped fighting. The galaxy learned an important lesson from the fall of the Zephyrian Empire. Technology and military might were not enough to guarantee victory. The most powerful force in the universe was the desire for freedom and the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect it. Years later, when other species asked humans how they had defeated such a powerful enemy, the answer was always the same. Humans had won because they never forgot what it meant to be free individuals with the right to think their own thoughts and make their own choices. The Zephyrian Empire had controlled its people through fear and collective thinking. But humanity thrived on diversity, independence, and the courage to do impossible things when the cause was right. These qualities had saved not just humanity, but every species in the galaxy. Jake Morrison continued exploring the unknown regions of space for many years. He never forgot Commander Velther's sacrifice or the lesson that former enemies could become friends when they learned to respect each other's freedom. The galaxy was a better place because one human had refused to give up hope.